All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome as you're coming to join us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. We're really excited to have you. So welcome, welcome. Seeing a lot of wonderful names here. Welcome to UMass Lowell officially. Really excited to talk to you about our classroom culture and get you ready for your arrival. So welcome, welcome. Got a great group of people today. Welcome, everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're from. Good evening. While we're waiting for a few last people here, if we could just ask people, put your preferred name in the chat and your country. Tell us your name and where you are at right now. First name and country would be great in the chat. Tejaswi from India, welcome. Manoj, India, awesome. Someone from Iran. Betty from Netherlands, hello. Impa from India, awesome. Gabby, South Africa, welcome. Sabrina from Germany, hi. Manita, Thailand. Kabir, Jordan. Asan, Nigeria, wow, fantastic. Awesome. Tarush, India, hi, welcome. It's always so exciting to see where everyone's from and can't wait to meet you all. Derek from Ghana, hi. Yashwant from India, welcome. Sujit, India, hi. Very excited to have you all. So we're working with all sorts of different time zones. Right now here in Massachusetts, it's 9 a.m. So I'm sure we're working with all sorts of different times here. Rishis from India, welcome. Shrikant from India, welcome. Hoping you're all staying safe. Okay. Awesome. So thank you so much. We're on time to start if my panelists are ready to go. So welcome again, everyone, to UMass Lowell, to this webinar this morning. We're really excited to have you all. My name is Allison Lynch. I am from our Office of Multicultural Affairs here at UMass Lowell, or OMA. I have two fantastic presenters with us today, Emily and Emma. So I'd love to pass it over to Emily to say hi.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Fritz. I am an advisor at the International Students and Scholars Office. I have been with UMass Lowell for some time now. I did my undergraduate career at UMass Lowell. I went on to do my master's as well as working as a student in my undergraduate career at the ISSO. And I've been here ever since. So I'm happy to be here and I will pass it over to Emma to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, so nice to have you here. My name is Emma Peterson and I'm a first year Global Studies PhD student at UMass Lowell. So I moved to Lowell about a year ago and have really been enjoying my experience. And during my undergraduate years in another state in Ohio, I studied abroad multiple times and also lived in Taiwan last year. So I have some experience with adjusting to different classroom cultures and I'm so excited to have you all here.
Awesome, thank you both. So you all have an interesting perspective. Two of us are staff, but we've all been students before. I just graduated with my PhD a few weeks ago. So we have multiple perspectives for you, both as students and staff. And so we're happy to answer any questions as we go. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so officially, again, we want to welcome you. Our mascot is a riverhawk. So now you are officially a UMass Lowell riverhawk. So if you hear that around, you see our mascot is a literal hawk. So you might see him around campus. His name is Rowdy. You can't miss him. So you are officially a river hawk. So we're really excited to welcome you to the UMass Lowell community, hoping to give you lots of advice, tips, and tricks today to be successful inside the classroom specifically. And so we know that your customs in different countries are very different, and that's absolutely fine. That's kind of what makes our campus so diverse. We have lots of international students from lots of different places, as well as domestic students from all states. So we're very used to the diversity and the differences that you might experience. And it's okay to be a little bit shocked at how different things are. So please ask questions. We are here to help you. Next slide, please. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about culture shock, what that means, and then US classroom culture as well. So really trying to help, prepare you as much as possible for what the US classroom is going to look like for you. So before we go into that, I do want to talk a little bit about the stages of culture shock. And so some of you, this might be your first time in the US. Some of you might have been here before, or perhaps you're a transfer student from another university in the US coming to UMass Lowell, but wherever you're coming from, there's going to be a bit of a shock for you. So I don't know if you've seen this culture shock curve before, but just something to keep in mind for your own mental health, for your own kind of sanity as we move forward and you come to the university. And so when you first come to UMass Lowell, you're going to experience this honeymoon period, right? You've seen the movies in the US, you've seen the TV shows, and you're really excited to get here and experience everything that you've always hoped it would be. So you're going to get here, it's going to be very exciting, everything is new, it's going to be wonderful, and it will continue to be. But for some of you, there might be a bit of a culture shock. So at the bottom, you can see the number of months here in the US. So usually at about the 6-month mark, students start to really miss home, and they really start to look for, community, people to remind them of home. And that's when they get kind of stuck in their silos of students staying with the students from their same countries. And that's fine, but we do want you to know other students, domestic students, staff, us. We want you to get to know us. So we hope that as your time progresses, you will start to adjust. And so the 6-month mark puts us at about, I don't know, I guess the beginning or mid-spring semester. So the first semester is really exciting, and you're going to, see and hear all sorts of new things. It might get a little bit overwhelming at times, like when finals come and things like that, but you are ready for this. But just to give you an idea of, okay, you're going to come, it's going to be wonderful. You might have a little bit of trouble, getting used to everything, but then you will adapt. So in about a year's time, maybe 10 months time for some of you, this might happen quicker, and that's okay. Then you'll adapt, right? Then you'll kind of become a true, a river hawk. You're going to feel like you're at home here in the United States. Then you're going to go home and say, oh, I miss it. So there's going to be lots of ups and downs, but please know that we're here for you if you get lost or you need any help along the way. Okay, so in terms of the classroom culture, the one thing we want you to know is that it is really informal and relaxed, and this could be completely opposite from what you're used to back home. So our professors here, 9 times out of 10, are very, very relaxed. They're very approachable. They're willing to give their free time to you. For example, they have office hours that are dedicated to students just to ask questions. You can meet with them one-on-one. Some of them might be virtual this semester. A lot of them should be in person. Kind of depends on what the professor wants to do. So at the beginning of each class, you will receive a syllabus. For those of you who aren't familiar with this. So it will list all of the class times, all of your assignments, all of the readings. It's really, really, really useful. And so, usually they'll put it up online as well in case you lose it. So the office hours will be written there. If appointments are required, they will let you know. So you'll just have to, reach out beforehand and say, hey, can I come meet with you at this time? Or just show up, because they'll be there. Usually they're weekly, maybe 1 to 2 hours a week. And they're just there kind of waiting for you to come and ask questions. So attending those office hours are a sign of engagement, not weakness. So just because you go to those, please don't think, oh, I'm struggling, so I have to go to office hours. No, you want to do that. The professors really, really enjoy it. And you kind of make yourself known to them. Undergrad students tend to dress pretty casual. So, we want to let you know sometimes you might see sweatpants and t-shirts that are pretty common. They're not encouraged. It's just something that you might see a lot, especially at those 8 a.m. classes, the first thing in the morning. Students are kind of look like they rolled out of bed and come to classes. And I know that's not a great way to think about this, but most students, especially like at the grad level, the PhD level, dress as if they're going to work, business casual. So don't be surprised if you see, lots of undergraduate students that look like they just woke up coming to some classes. Coffees and other soft beverages are generally okay to bring to the classroom, although in labs, we don't tend to allow food or drink, and you may see some students bring food into the classroom as well. So generally, your professor might have a policy on this, like please don't bring food or drink to class. It's very, very common to see water bottles, juices, that sort of thing. Not necessarily a huge plate of food, but definitely snacks and things like that, especially around the lunch hour. So for some of you, you might be saying, that's really disrespectful. You really shouldn't be doing that. And you don't, have to bring anything with you. If you feel as though, that's disrespectful, I don't want to do that, that's fine. But just know it's a little bit more relaxed in the US, just trying to kind of give you a heads up on that. Next slide. Okay, and now I'm going to pass it over to Emma to talk about how to communicate with your professor.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allie. So as we know, different cultures have different ways of communicating, and this means kind of different levels of politeness or formality. And so it may take some time to get used to how people communicate or communicate with your professor in the US. But from my experience, studying abroad in France, it was very different. It took some time to adapt to communicating, figure out how to communicate in a different language. That wasn't my first language, but also how to address people and the professor. But I recommend just being open to learn and don't be afraid to ask questions or to make mistakes. So in the US classroom, when we address our professor, we know that some professors will ask to be referred to by their first name, and they'll make sure to let you know if they would like to be called by their first name. But when you first start addressing a professor, if they have a PhD, feel free to use Dr. So-and-so, Dr. last name, or just stick with professor last name. I think that is one that is very universally accepted. So when you address professors in an email, it's very important to say, "Dear Professor Smith," or whatever the last name is. That kind of just shows a level of formality and respect. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask your professor how they prefer to be addressed. As Ali mentioned, professors are very open and there to help you, so they will be happy to answer any questions. Another aspect of communicating is communicating with different staff members that work at UMass Lowell. This could be your academic advisor, academic department, or administrative office. So when writing an email with any questions about any of these topics, you can identify yourself by including your UMass Lowell ID number. And this can be found on your student ID card that you all will be receiving, or also you will receive it in an email from UMass Lowell. Another thing to keep in mind is that it's important not to send the same email to different university members or send an email to all professors or staff members at the same time. You can CC the necessary people so that they all get the same email and can respond accordingly. Also, another thing to keep in mind would be to allow 2 business days for a response. A lot of people will be receiving a lot of emails, especially in the first few weeks of the semester, and they will get back to you, but just having a little bit of patience could be helpful for them. So again, it may take some time to get used to different communication styles in the US classroom, but again, being open to learn and don't being afraid to ask questions or make mistakes. You can also take cues from your other classmates and peers in the classroom as well. Moving on to active participation, how US students act and participate in the US classrooms. So some very good tips to start when you are in the classroom. It's important to be on time for class, ideally 5 to 10 minutes early, or sometimes points may be taken off for being late, depending on the professor, and this information will also be available in your syllabus. Also, being on or a little bit early is helpful if you have to park on campus or you don't, or it's the first day and you're trying to find where your classrooms are. Giving yourself a little bit extra time to, go to the bathroom or take a drink of water can be helpful as well to make sure that you are on time. Also, in the US, we also talk about contributing to class discussions if applicable. So ultimately, you and your classmates contribute to each other's learning, and especially in graduate classes. So as a PhD student, and I'm taking graduate classes, basically all my classes are discussions, so we help each other learn. This is especially important in my classes. I have international students as well, and it's very intriguing to hear about different perspectives from different cultures and countries. And so really talking and participating actively in class is encouraged and helps all of us learn. Also, asking questions during lectures is totally okay, and it's okay to respectfully interrupt your professor. This may be different in person or online, but just raising your hand at any point in the lecture, the professor will be happy to call on you and to hear what you have to say. And it's encouraged and expected because participation is often counted towards your overall grade, and the different grade breakdowns will be in your syllabus as well. And it also shows that you're prepared for class. If you come in with some questions or discussion topics you'd like to talk about, it shows that you're really engaged with the class material. Also, another important tip to think about is to try not to fall behind in the classes. And if you aren't understanding the course material or you have any questions about the readings, speaking with your professor as soon as possible is encouraged. This could be, you could be going to their office hours, sending a quick email, talking to them after class. As Ali mentioned, professors are generally very open and accepting of any kind of time you want to talk with them, very informal, and are really there to help you. And of course, this is expected and not necessarily seen as a weakness if you reach out for help. All right, thinking about independent and critical thinking as part of the US classroom. So as we know, different cultures place value on different things. In the US culture, in the US classroom, generally people encourage independent thinking, critical thinking, individual opinions, and questions. So the American system places the ability to think and analyze over the ability to memorize, especially in college, and I would say especially in graduate courses. So sharing your perspectives and presenting supporting evidence and arguments to your professors and peers is encouraged. Everybody has their own different experiences and perspectives, and that's valued in the US classroom. It's also encouraged to respectfully disagree with or challenge points made by your classmates and professors. So you can disagree or challenge your professor and classmates, but also respectful debate and exchange of ideas is important in the US classroom. Also, you can back up your ideas with evidence or logical support to support your arguments. Also, we see that both professors and students direct the learning process through discussions. This may be discussion questions you have from the reading, just any other kind of questions or connections you make between different topics, or the friendly debate that may happen between classmates. But we must keep in mind that each professor will run the classroom slightly differently, and your professor will let you know what is expected of you. This can also be, the professor will talk about this in the first class of the semester, but they also will talk about it in the syllabus. But also if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the professor at any point. And kind of going back to how each professor will run the classroom slightly differently, in my grad classes, the discussion and the questions are run a little bit differently. So kind of keeping an open mind and being flexible and adaptable can help kind of interact with independent and critical thinking in different classes. All right, thank you. I will talk a little bit about group work and collaboration. So it is encouraged in the US that you discuss course topics with your classmates inside and outside of the classroom. This could be kind of before the class starts. You can have like a brief discussion, or after the class, or if you have a group chat with your classmates, you're feel free to discuss course themes to kind of engage with the discussion and the topics a little bit deeper. But most assignments are expected to be completed individually. And of course, this will depend on what your major is. If you have an essay to write or labs or any other kind of assignments, most of the times they will be completed individually. And this includes that student work must be independent and original. So Emily will talk a little bit more about academic integrity in the next few slides. It's important to keep in mind that when you write your own work, it needs to be your own. However, sometimes the professors will have group projects in your classes. And this may include working on a group presentation or maybe group labs or group projects. And so the professor will be very open, and it'll be in the syllabus what is expected for group projects with the specific guidelines. So ultimately, group work will vary by class, and the professor will outline in the syllabus or in the class the expectations for the group work. And while in the group work or any other kind of assignments, collaboration between classmates is expected, it's very important to know the university's academic integrity guidelines, and Emily will talk about that in the next few slides. So I'll pass it off to Emily.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Emma. That was fantastic. I'm really happy to be able to have you here today to talk about your perspective on learning about the US culture in the classroom. So I will be talking briefly about academic integrity. And I've done this presentation a few times before, and we've done a couple of research projects on it as well. And I want to start by saying, because I was watching a video last night, a presentation on academic integrity and the cultural norms in the US. And I think that when we talk about academic integrity, people immediately think cheating. And I think that there's clear examples of what could be considered cheating, right? And when we talk about academic integrity, yes, cheating may be a part of that, right? But there's a lot of different layers to academic integrity that are really specific to the US cultural education system norms. And that's why we're going to be talking about it today, because it's something that all students have to adjust to, regardless of whether you come from a different country or whether you have been in the US your entire life and you have gone through the US education system from K through 12. And that's why we're going to be talking about it today, because it's very important to know the expectations at the university so that you can abide by them and continue to study at UMass Lowell. So I did put the actual academic integrity guidelines from the university website. And so I'm going to read this off to you. It means that students are responsible for the honest completion and representation of their work, for the appropriate citation of resources, and for respect of others' academic endeavors. So this is a pretty general statement, but there's a couple of different components of this that the university has broken down into sections. And to start, it's do not falsify data, conduct honest research, credit others' ideas, so make sure that you're crediting others' ideas if it's not your own, make sure to do original work when it is asked for, and to be sure to cite your sources. So there may be different norms and protocols for academic integrity in the US versus where you are in your home country. In addition to that, there's also different protocols within the department that you may be in, or within the classroom that you may be in. So for instance, Emma just talked about group work. And I remember a time in my undergraduate career where we had to come into class. I had a classroom. I remember it was in Coburn Hall, which I haven't been in since they newly renovated. I can't wait to see it. But the case was that we had to come in for every class, and we had a quiz at the beginning of the class. And a couple of students had met up a little bit earlier in the class and were chatting about what the reading was the night before because they hadn't read themselves. And the professor came in and was aware that students had been chatting about it. And after that, there was an academic integrity issue because there were students in that group that hadn't read. And the students that had read were sharing, oh, here's what the reading was about. And that professor deemed that to be an academic integrity issue. Because it was a quiz, you were going to be graded on it. That's just one example, right? But when it comes to perhaps group work, sometimes the professor may say, okay, this group work, every part of that group work is going to be expected that you collaborate with other group members for each section. And so that could be a case where there's no clear cheating there, because the expectations are actually that you're going to be working and collaborating on every section of the group. In different scenarios, you may actually find that in group work, you are expected to have individual sections. So each person will have to do one section, and it will say, okay, Emily did section A and Allie did section B, etc. So it is going to be contingent upon what the assignment is, what the expectations are, what is stated upon in the syllabus. And I think there's also these general academic integrity guidelines that just hover over us for general cases. And that's within UMass Lowell as well as the US education system, where, make sure to always be citing your sources, as I said, and make sure to always present, if it's someone else's idea, don't present that as your own idea. Make sure you're giving credit and make sure you're citing. So the importance of academic integrity is, of course, to continue so that you're maintaining compliance at UMass Lowell. As an F1 student, if you are to be suspended or terminated from the university, then unfortunately that does impact your F1 status. So there's a status implication that you want to, of course, be aware of, but also just the general stance. Students come to the US and to be in the education system to get that degree and then to move on so that they can go into the workforce. So you want to make sure that you're continuing at the university, you're continuing within the US education system, and to meet your end goal, which is to get that degree and to eventually work in your field of study. It is, once you complete a degree in the university, it does show that value of, okay, I got a US education degree, and that you were able to maintain the guidelines in which academic integrity or the university protocols were followed. So with that said, just a couple of reminders: always make sure that you're citing your work and that you're not falsifying any data, you're not taking any ideas as your own. And if you fail to do so, that is what we call plagiarism. And this is something that students really struggle with throughout their academic career. So what I would say, I actually remember in my first master's class, I had a professor who broke down academic integrity for me in terms of citations. So what he had actually explained to the classroom was how to take notes, so that when you're taking notes, you're making it easier for yourself when you need to go back and do the citations. So you're taking notes on what you're reading, and then you're saying, okay, this idea was page 15, and this was the author of the article that I was reading, and this is the article name. And that simple tool helped me so much in my master's career at UMass Lowell to be able to streamline the process for myself as well. So again, it's something that it's going to take time to get used to. Always look to your professors and to the syllabus for instructions. And sometimes, it will vary from case to case and from professor to professor on assignments. But I think the general rules of, okay, don't copy and paste and say it's your own. There's some general rules that will always, of course, apply. But in other circumstances, it may be up to what the actual expectation is for that assignment as well. And so with that said, when in doubt, always check in with your professor. Different colleges also may use different citation resources. So for instance, in my program, or at least like in my undergrad, we were usually using like MLA citations. But we eventually, in my master's program, we used APA. So that's also going to be specific to whatever program that you're in. And most likely your syllabus will have that information as to like, how do you cite sources? And what does that need to be formatted like? So academic integrity, again, this is all for the end goal, for you to be able to complete your degree, to walk at the ceremony, and then to hopefully get your dream job in your field of study. So remember that it is important, and your degree shows that you had that grit to succeed at UMass Lowell, to get through all of the different assignments that you were assigned. And there's so many valuable tools and resources that you learned throughout your experience, which includes lab safety. Especially a lot of our students are STEM, right? So science, technology, engineering, math. We have state-of-the-art labs here. So that's going to be so valuable to a potential employer who's looking for somebody who has that research experience, who has that experience working in labs, who maybe has experience overseeing others in labs. And in the US, we really value that independent and critical thinking. So in some academic integrity equals valuable credentials. It's going to take you far. And some of the skills that you're going to be learning in your program, you'll use further in your careers as well. Okay, I'm going to pass it over.
Awesome, thank you. And keep those questions coming in. We will answer them at the end here. So please keep those questions coming. A couple more helpful tips in terms of how you can minimize culture shock in the classroom. And we've talked about these, bits and pieces this morning, but speak to your professors, okay? If you're confused about what to call them or any questions about the course material, talk to them, email them. Sometimes they put their office phone number on the syllabus. Go to the office hours, take advantage of their available time. Do as your classmates do, right? So if you see a behavior that's encouraged by your professor, follow their lead. If you see students that are succeeding, that are talking a lot in the class, as Emma mentioned, discussion points can be part of your grade. So again, talk. You are graded on speaking in the class. So even if you're shy, think about this as using, an opportunity to work on your language skills, on your English skills, and bringing that international perspective to the class is so important. Again, Emma had said this earlier, it's kind of like you are bringing a global mind to us in our little town of Lowell. And we really want to know more about your perspectives, your life journey, and how you can contribute to the classroom conversation. So please try your best to step out of your comfort zone and share those with us. Be on time. This is in capital letters. A lot of international students or students from different cultures come to the US and say, oh, this class starts at 11 a.m. I'll come at 11:30, and that's not how it works here at all. If anything, we ask that you please come 10 minutes early to class, because even arriving 5 minutes late can negatively impact your grade. And we don't want to see that. If there's a lecture happening, even if there's an event on campus, we want you to come on time. Okay, so please remember that if you can. We know some students tend to come a little bit later, but you might have some negative consequences for that. Understanding plagiarism is a really common mistake. So as Emily was talking about, please understand what this means. Review our academic integrity policy. It's on our website. We don't want you to get in trouble for something that you just were simply not aware of. And so please make sure you educate yourself on how to properly cite information so you don't get in trouble later on. And then get a study buddy. So if you're having trouble understanding the material, reach out to your classmates and your professors. So everyone wants each other to succeed. It's definitely a team effort to get to that graduation. So please take advantage of those around you and get that study buddy. Thank Thank you. Some other campus resources that we have. So we do have a writing center. So if you're having trouble writing a lab, but you're not really sure, who to go to in terms of writing research papers and what's expected of you, the Writing Center is a great resource for that. So you can just Google UML Writing Center and it will come right up. The Centers for Learning is also really useful for our undergraduate students. So again, this is for undergrads only. This is our tutoring center. So for those of you that are having a lot of trouble in your classes, you can sign up online for a tutoring session with a student. It's actually run by fellow students that are doing really well in their classes and can help you understand the material. Our library staffs are wonderful. O'Leary Library on South Campus and Leiden Library on North Campus have a really cool website where you can live chat with librarians to help you find, books that you might need or just navigate those libraries. Really beautiful places to study. You will see when you come to campus that they're really nice places to be at, nice and quiet too. We also have a counseling center on campus. And again, we know in some countries that there's a bit of a bias around getting help, but please know when you come to UMass Lowell, there's a really big push, especially now, for mental wellness. Making sure that you get the support that you need. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, again, especially as you get to the end of the semester, projects are due, papers are due, please know that we have a really robust counseling center, completely free of charge to you. You can make appointments over the phone or online. Again, if you Google UML counseling, it's under our wellness office that houses the wellness center. Our nurses are there. So if you're not feeling well, that's where you go. Our disability services team is there and our counseling center is there. So again, take advantage of this if you're feeling a little overwhelmed. This is something that all students do. This is very, very common in the US. So please know that there are resources out there for you. So your professors, right, take advantage of their office hours again. My office, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, we have lots and lots of resources for you, specifically as international students that I'll talk about in the next slide, to help you adjust to life in the US as a college student. And then ISSO, that's Emily's office. For questions about your student visa status, please feel free to reach out to them. We work very closely together, but we, kind of have our hands in different baskets. So again, ISSO works with the immigration compliance pieces, and OMA, the Multicultural Affairs Office, deals with everything sort of inside and outside the classroom. So there are differences there. So in terms of specific resources for you as international students that my office can help with, there's just a couple. So we do have the OMA Student Success Summit, and this is a mandatory orientation for you as international students. And this will be Tuesday, August 24th to Thursday, August 26th this year. We'll have both virtual and in-person pieces to this. The virtual piece is I guess the more important, I guess you could say, and that will be in the mornings from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And those are the more mandatory pieces. And so if you are not in the US by then, you can absolutely attend these. So I will put the link to register in the chat in a minute. And so you can go ahead and register for that. The Pair Up program is another really fun program. It's one of our most popular ones. So when you sign up, we would actually match you with some domestic students based on common interests and majors. And so we're accepting applications now. So I can go ahead and put that link in the chat too. And you can absolutely join us. August 1st is the deadline. We meet twice a month. Once will be virtual on the first Fridays of each month, and then every third Friday of each month would be in person. So we would go kayaking, we have a multicultural dance night planned, all sorts of fun things. So I'm really hoping that you'll join us, meet other international students and meet domestic students. It's a really great way to get to know students on campus, especially when you're coming for the first time. And then we have English conversation groups and culture shock talks that happen on Friday. So a little bit more about the culture shock curve you saw earlier. We would dive deeper into that, understand where you are coming from in your culture and how it's different here in the US, and what to expect. So those weekly workshops are on Fridays at 10 and 11 a.m. respectively, and it just helps you acclimate to life. So we're hoping to do these in person. More details will come. You'll be getting lots of emails from me and my team as the summer goes on and then into fall. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass it over to Emma for some housing resources.
Thank you so much, Allie, for the wonderful discussion on the different resources that we have at UMass Lowell. So to talk about housing, there's basically two options, or lots of options, but two general options for housing. You can live on campus or off campus. So for on-campus housing, it's a great option for both undergraduates and graduate students. There are options for graduate students to live on campus. And so I lived in the on-campus housing during my undergraduate years, and I felt like I really got integrated into the community and really did make lifelong friends. But also when I studied abroad in different countries and when I lived in Taiwan, I also lived on campus or interacted a lot with different cultures. So on campus, I lived with the students in that country, but also some mix of international students as well. And I feel like it really helped me get over culture shock. So as Allie was explaining before, in the first 2 to 3 months that I studied abroad or lived in Taiwan, I was really excited. It was the honeymoon period, meeting so many people, language skills improving. But then again, as Allie mentioned, after about 3, 4, or 5 months, it gets a lot more difficult. Things are tiring and you kind of start to miss your holidays back home and spending time with your friends and family. But how to overcome this? So when I lived with students, multiple different students, it kind of helped me accept the challenge and that the difficult times will lead to growth, and also encouraged me to make new friends and connections in the new country. So being surrounded by students who lived in the countries I was at, it was very helpful to say yes to the opportunities if they wanted to invite me to go to a museum or go hiking. It was a great way to meet new people. I also was able to, if I lived with students who were also international students, I talked about my experiences with culture shock, and I found out that they were going through the same thing. So it can be really nice to realize that you're not alone with culture shock and that you're going through similar experiences. To also talk a little bit more about on-campus housing, you can see that there is the UMass Lowell Student and Services ResLife website. And students who live on campus tend to have higher grade point averages than their counterparts, people who live off of campus over the course of their academic career. So the research has supported that. And as mentioned before, it's a great way to make lifelong friends. Another great option for students is off-campus housing. So in the pre-arrival guide, there are multiple considerations on housing, and you can see that pre-arrival guide at that website for ISSO, and also during orientations, people will talk more about housing. Another great thing to consider is the location and safety and monthly expenses. So many of the students that I know who have found off-campus housing use sites such as Facebook pages. There's two that are most common called UMass Lowell Black Market and UMass Lowell Students Housing and Rentals. People also use such websites such as hotpads.com, apartments.com, and also Craigslist. Even if you just do a simple Google search, apartments for rent in Lowell, lots of options will come up. But also it's important to remember that UMass Lowell doesn't endorse any of these sites. And I also recommend that you be very careful to avoid any kinds of scams or less than ideal living situations. More specifically, I found that it's very important to know all of the information about the apartment up front, and that the property owner and the roommates are providing you with all the information, such as if there's parking or how close it is to North or South Campus. Also, what each month of rent is, if there is some kind of contracts or rental insurance. And important to think of how the rent and utilities such as water and electricity and hot water may be extra expenses as well. And if you have any questions about anything related to housing, the ISSO and the OMA are happy to help with this process as well. All right, I think I will be turning it over to Emily.
Thank you so much, Emma. And just to reiterate, there's a lot of information regarding housing in the pre-arrival guide. So if you just go to the ISSO website, uml.edu/ISSO, click on new students and then pre-arrival, you'll find just loads of information there. And like Emma said, there's some rental agencies that are commonly used by students that are linked there, and also a checklist of what to consider when you're thinking of living off campus. And as Emma said, we can't really endorse any of the rental agencies that provide for you to live off campus. We don't have an off-campus housing department here at UMass Lowell. So if you choose to live off campus, that is going to be a personal decision that you make. Just keep in mind that, that means that you sort of have to be a little bit more responsible by coordinating all of the logistics with that. And one thing I wanted to mention, I thought it was great that Emma also talked about scams. Do be aware of scams, never wire any money without seeing a place, or, make sure that somebody at least can go check it out for you, so that you're not giving money without actually knowing who you're giving money to and for what exactly you are giving money towards. And, again, it's just, you have to be as responsible as possible, and you're kind of opening yourselves up to potential issues if you're not as careful as possible. So it is recommended to live on campus if you can, especially if you're a first year student. You want to be able to immerse yourself in that experience as much as possible. But again, we have many students that live off campus. It just may be, in terms of the logistics, it may be a little bit more challenging. Keep in mind that you do have to sign a lease generally, and that when you sign a lease with the apartment, it's generally 9 months or a year minimum. And also the location piece, you want to make sure you can get to, like, how far away is it from the campus that you're taking classes? So if you're taking classes on North Campus or South Campus, how far is it going to be for you to get there from your apartment? And how are you going to get there? Are you planning on walking? Is that, like, what time are your classes? Are your classes at night? Maybe walking during night at a certain time in that area is not the best idea. You probably shouldn't be walking alone on the streets. So are you planning on getting a car? So there's a lot of considerations, and location is such a huge factor. You want to make sure that you can get to campus. It's not too far away from campus, and that there's feasible transportation. Lowell doesn't have the best public transportation in the area. There are buses, but the train doesn't really bring you in different places within the city. The train's really for going to other cities. So the transportation system is not as modern as it could be here. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for off-campus housing, and definitely choosing a place that's as close as possible to campus is going to be in your benefit. Okay, so I'm going to go over a couple of just pre-arrival reminders. I feel like it's important to talk about this stuff as well as the housing stuff, because we're here all today, and it's helpful to just have a space for us to go over this stuff. So I just took a screenshot of our pre-arrival section of the website, just for anybody who's not aware. We do have, so if you just go to the uml.edu/ISSO website, you can click on the new students tab and then pre-arrival and arrival information. And this is going to be your go-to place for everything pre-arrival related. So we have the pre-arrival checklist, we have the pre-arrival guide. That's the guide that we're talking about that has pages and pages of information about off-campus housing, about applying for a visa, about a lot of just important stuff and resources on campus. We also have the links to the health services office and the health requirements. And UMass Lowell does provide airport transportation. So you do have to follow the process for airport transportation. So initial students can only enter the US up to 30 days prior to the start date listed on their I-20. So if the start date listed on your I-20 is September 1st, 2021, August 2nd would be the first day that you could enter the US with an approved visa and an initial I-20 or DS-2019. And you are welcome to sign up for airport transportation pickup. That's through one of our off-campus vendors. So we outsource the airport transportation pickup to a local vendor. What you would do is you would just go to this website, you would click on the airport transportation, and you would fill out the form there and send it over to the vendor themselves, and they would put you in the books and schedule it. You may see a bill that is generated, but UMass Lowell ISSO, as long as you're an initial student, it's your first time coming to UMass Lowell, we do cover the cost for that airport transportation. So if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer that. And again, you just want to make sure that you're here by the first day of the semester. It doesn't run after the first day of the semester unless it's an extreme circumstance. So with that said, this website is really your go-to place for anything pre-arrival related. We also have the COVID-19 FAQ that's going to be available just on our main web page, as well as the travel resources. So that's going to be available on our main web page as well. And that has information about CDC guidance. It's a big resource for just links regarding COVID-19. So potential travel bans pertaining to COVID-19. So the presidential proclamations, for instance, the India presidential proclamation that's barring any student from India from entering the US until after August 1st. The CDC recommendations and guidance, the Department of State recommendations and protocols for traveling right now, testing negative protocols, etc. So just a lot of resources that students can make use of, and in fact should be looking at before traveling during this time because of how complicated traveling is right now due to the pandemic. I did want to talk quickly about the vaccination and immunization requirements at the university. These are requirements of all students. So we always had a immunization requirement at the University of Massachusetts Lowell because we are a state institution. So we have to follow whatever the Massachusetts Department of Education and Department of Public Health mandate for the state of Massachusetts, anybody going to a public institution. So we have a list of vaccines and immunizations that are required in order to study at UMass Lowell. So if you have not already, please do log into the Student Health Patient Portal and to fill out any forms that are necessary and upload as many documentations as possible to them. With that said, the COVID-19 vaccine requirement was just added as an immunization requirement to study at UMass Lowell. And so if you have, so UMass Lowell will accept any COVID-19 vaccine that has been approved by the World Health Organization. So if you have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated by a vaccine that's been approved by WHO, then you would want to keep that documentation, take a copy of it, upload it to your Student Health Patient Portal. If you do not have access to a vaccine, which I understand that many people do not have access to vaccines right now, don't panic. You will have the opportunity, as long as the vaccine is still available as it is right now here in the US, you will have the opportunity to get vaccinated upon arrival. And UMass Lowell, so ISSO, myself, and a couple of my colleagues have been having regular meetings to discuss, how are we going to approach and accommodate students that are unable to get vaccinated in their home countries that appear on campus that are in need of a vaccine upon arrival. So we are working to develop a plan for students that are in that scenario. I think that the most important thing is that you will be able to get vaccinated upon arrival here in the US. And we do have an FAQ for vaccines that maybe we can pop in the chat. And that really answers a lot of questions that international students have right now about the COVID-19 vaccination process. So with that said, that was all we had prepared for you today. And I do see that we have questions appearing in the Q&A function. So just a shout out quick to the Q&A function within Zoom. If you have any questions, feel free to pop that into that Q&A and we will be answering them live.
All right, great. Thank you both. So Emily, we have a couple questions here. Emma and I have been trying to answer as many as we can on the back end here. The first one was, are there any chances of an increment of tuition fees that are mentioned in the I-20?
So the fees that are listed on the I-20 are just an estimate. And I would, yes, that can vary. So for instance, I think that there is generally there's an update in tuition and fees sometime in July of each year when the Board of Trustees vote on the tuition and fees for the upcoming year. I'm not sure what that's going to be looking like. I don't know if it's available just yet. But the short answer is that yes, it is just a best guesstimate for what your tuition and fees will be. It is contingent. Let's say, you were in a program that for some reason charges an additional $450 for, I think there's one program that charges an additional $450 for labs or something like that. So always check in on the Solution Center website. There's a whole description of fees and certain nuances that may, or fees that you may be charged if you are in certain programs. It's definitely possible. I wouldn't take it as 100%. This is what your bill is going to be, what's on the I-20. But you can definitely reach out to the Solution Center, and the Solution Center can provide you with the best estimate if you're already enrolled for classes. They can't really provide you something if you're not yet enrolled. So I would say go ahead and get enrolled, and you'll get a bill generated soon.
Another question was, if they're enrolled for two classes that are just 15 minutes apart, do you think it'll be possible for me to be on time for the second class? So it sort of depends on where you are. And so if you come to orientation, we will be giving you a campus tour, both virtually and in person. And so we will help you navigate how to get from class to class. If you have a class on North Campus and you have to take a shuttle to South Campus, trying to adjust to the timings of that, because it could take more than 15 minutes depending on the time of day, right? Like if it's 5 o'clock, it's the rush hour, people are trying to get around campus, it could take a little bit longer than that. So we will help you as much as possible navigate your classes where they are. So please, again, sign up for the orientation. I just put the link one more time into the chat there. So we will help you get from A to B, we promise. Another question was about on-campus job opportunities.
I'll take that now.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, so on-campus job opportunities at UMass Lowell. So there's not, so I will first start by saying that, there are some opportunities that may be available on campus. And to supplement whatever financial resources you have, that's perfectly okay. So to have a little bit more of like spending money, right? Generally on-campus jobs do not, what my fear would be is that I don't want students to rely on campus jobs for their financial support. So for their living expenses, for instance, when you go to the US Embassy to apply for your visa, the US consular is going to be looking for financial documentation and looking for how you're going to be paying for your for your educational career in the US. It's important to rely on the funds that you did show the US Embassy. And that's true because it will be also listed on your I-20, how you actually will be paying for college. So while there are some on-campus jobs available, there is not a large amount available. And it could be that you are unable to get a job in your first or second semester. So I would not want students to rely on getting a job for financial means. But certainly there are some jobs that are available on campus. It is possible that you're able to get a job. And again, that can be used as like supplemental spending money, but it really shouldn't be used as your financial support. And that's because also it's US immigration law, of course, to be able to support yourself based on the funds that you showed the US Embassy and consular.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have quite a few questions about the vaccine. Emily, you did touch on this already, but in terms of, for example, they got vaccinated in their home country, but it wasn't approved for the US. Do they need to get re-vaccinated again in Lowell? So yes, if it's not approved by the World Health Organization, yes, but please don't worry. There are lots and lots of vaccination appointments here in Lowell. So, just plan ahead if you can come early so you can make sure to get, the 1 or the 2 vaccinations upon arrival. That would be great. So Emily, I don't know if you have any additional information there.
That was great, Allie. My only additional comment would be that there will be more information coming on that as well. We're aware that there's going to be students that have been vaccinated, but it was not approved by the World Health Organization. So I would say that plan for us to be, bogging down your email address with information on that, both your personal and your student email address. So more information on that to follow.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have a lot of questions about the vaccine. So there was another one. If you're fully vaccinated, do you have to quarantine? No. If you're fully vaccinated, just upload your information to your student health portal before you arrive, and you should be good to go.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this is where, yeah, right, Allie. To be honest, like there's so many layers of guidance that are coming, that are available, right? So we have like the UMass Lowell protocols, we have the state of Massachusetts travel advisory, we have the CDC, we have the Department of State, we have your home country saying what they recommend to do. So there's just layers and layers of guidance that say different things. So I would say, even if you are vaccinated, there's still some travel protocols that you're going to need to follow. So, and this information is changing daily. So I would say it's best to check the CDC website in real time. So like the day before you travel, check the CDC website. And I have, again, I think I mentioned it and I can pop it in the chat. It's the COVID-19 travel resources. It's on the main ISSO webpage. And so that is that list literally links you to CDC, Department of State, Massachusetts, travel advisory and Massachusetts protocols. If you're going to be living in New Hampshire or staying in New Hampshire, you're going to have to look at the New Hampshire state as well, the airline. So there's just layers of requirements. So I would say to always check those the day before to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information. It may not be a bad idea to plan to quarantine should the need arise or should the requirement be, switched into effect.
Lots of other questions here about the vaccine. It's kind of hard to say. How many leaves are permitted for a bachelor student?
Leaves?
Yeah, right.
Okay, like a leave of absence,
maybe? I believe so, yes.
Okay, so how many leaves are permitted for a bachelor? I'm not sure how to answer that question. I don't know if there is like a maximum amount of leaves of absence for a bachelor's student. I would probably want you to talk to your academic department or the Solution Center. I have not personally heard of the maximum amount of leaves of absences. I can speak to the immigration related side of things. So, I mean, from the SEVP side, I don't think it would be a good idea for you to continuously take leaves of absences because that impacts your SEVIS status. So each time you take a leave of absence, we have to terminate your SEVIS status. And then when you're ready to return, we either have to reactivate the previous SEVIS status if it's within 5 months, or we have to issue you a new SEVIS number if it's outside of the 5 months. And issuing more and more SEVIS numbers could get messy. So I wouldn't recommend taking a maximum amount of leave of absences. I would say, come and speak to us if you are looking to have a leave of absence, and we'll be happy to work through that with you.
Okay, great. Again, a couple questions about the vaccine, but I think we tried to cover that as much as we could.
Yeah, I think the general information is just that there will be more information coming. We're not always I'm not able to answer like the most specific questions about what should we do in that scenario when you're not vaccinated by a World Health Organization approved vaccine. I think that I know that you will be required to have to be vaccinated upon arrival, right? But the actual logistics of that, that's what we're working on now. And you will definitely receive more information from us. And if you have any follow-up questions to that, please do let me know, and I'll be happy to address those in our conversations that we're having with the Health Services Office.
It looks like there's a question about academic advisors. So when does the university generally assign an advisor to students?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for undergrads, I think it's pretty quick. For graduate students, I think it may not happen until the beginning of the semester. So even if you don't see one assigned within SIS, there's if you look up just on UML website, and I'm not sure if someone can throw it in the chat there, but there's a list of graduate coordinators. If you're a graduate student, you can do UML graduate coordinators, just write in Google and you'll see a list of contacts for your department. And then on the undergraduate student side, there's also a list of undergraduate student advisors as well. And feel free to email ISSO and we'll be happy to provide that information to you as well.
There's a question about airport transportation. I am going to be sending you ISSO's link to apply for airport transportation before you arrive. So hold tight on that. So again, quarantine rules, if you're not vaccinated, again, we're working on that. Hoping that you won't have to quarantine at all. You come and you get your vaccine. If you have to wait in between your 2 shots, right, you might have to quarantine at that point until you're fully vaccinated. So please keep an eye on your email for vaccine questions. We can't really, and we're already over time today, so we're sorry, but we can't really keep answering those specifically.
Yeah, I would just say the quarantine rules, again, it's not really UMass Lowell quarantine requirements. I mean, I think yes, there are some of that, but there is also this Massachusetts state, there's the CDC, there's the US federal requirements for quarantining. So there's a lot of different resources that you will need to look at for quarantine. And we have a list that we've compiled, and we'll be happy to share that with you.
Okay, so it is 10:08. We have lots of other questions here, but I think we might want to, I know I have a meeting, so we might have to run to our next meetings today, but we do want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. We hope this information was helpful. Please reach out to us if you have any other questions that we weren't able to answer today. The ISSO at uml.edu is a good way. You can email us multicultural_affairs@uml.edu. So please reach out to us for your additional questions. Just want to be respectful of everybody's time this morning. So we can't wait to welcome you to campus. So we might be the first official ones to say welcome as a UMass Lowell student. We're really excited to have you. So again, any questions, email us. And thank you for coming today. And we will see you soon.
Thank you, Allie, and thank you all. Take care.